Guys, this your boy Coach Reed live here with my dog Brandon Clay. We got a special edition today. College football playoffs has been announced. But before we get into that, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube link and all podcasts wherever they are. Now, the four teams have been released. We got Michigan, no surprise. We got Washington, no surprise. We've got Texas, no surprise. Alabama, four seed, and the country is in an uproar right now. It's split down the middle because you've got the SEC champion, and I've always felt like going into the playoffs, there's no way the SEC champion gets left out. I didn't see any way that would happen. But
Agreed.
special set of circumstances this year because Bama lost to Texas. So you couldn't really leapfrog them over Texas because that's head-to-head matchup. And then you got Florida State, undefeated, has played good football all year. Florida State was my pick at the beginning of the season to win the national championship this year, but the quarterback goes down. And from Clay Travis going down, it seems like that changed the entire narrative of Florida State season. But I will go a step further. I think even if he was healthy, they still would have put Bama in. It's the SEC.
Okay, let me say this. Agree with all of that, right? I hate it for Jordan Travis. They made Jordan Travis the scapegoat, right? It just means more. That's the SEC slogan. You heard Greg Sankey. It'd be a travesty to have a playoff without the SEC. All of those things. Money talks, and we all heard it. Period. This game in the NIL era, and it's always been like this. It's just more to like now. TV contracts, ad revenue, partners, eyeballs. We want people to watch this podcast, let alone them wanting them to watch the game. They're not watching the game to see the backup quarterback or third straight quarterback for FSU. Now, here's the kicker, though, Reed. What if the NFL had taken out the Philadelphia Eagles when Carson Wentz was on the road to being the MVP in 2017? Nick Foles has the performance of his life down the stretch. We're not going to give those young men that same opportunity. Tate was going to be back for the playoff. Glenn held them down last night.
I think the problem is you have two things that you feel like are deserved, but you only have one spot. And you're going to have to upset somebody. I think that football is the ultimate team game, and Florida State earned the right to compete for a national championship through the way that they played and going undefeated. They beat LSU. You know, they won the games when their quarterback went down, but it didn't look sexy. They didn't look like Ohio State looked when Cardale Jones took over. He had Ohio State still putting up video game numbers, so it looked different. Nobody ever felt like Ohio State shouldn't play. But it's hard for me to ignore that Alabama and what they've done and what the SEC has done in dominating college football. It's hard for me to ignore that. So when you get in that room and you have to look at Florida State without their quarterback and Alabama, who has gotten progressively better over the course of the season, it's hard to ignore those facts. But I also will say this, Brandon, why the games played. Texas did beat Alabama. Florida State did handle business. So it's a system that has long been flawed. And this is the first time really in this era that it's been exposed for not being a strong enough system. We're going to 12 teams next year. So when you go to 12 teams, every conference champion is going to be in. But there's going to always be an argument over who gets those at-large spots. The people will never be happy.
Hey, here's one last final thought for you on this. Saban and Kirby forced the 12-team expansion. Wild, right? Dabo failed the ACC. Clemson's downfall this year, we're going to get to the transfer portal / free agency. His unwillingness to better and bolster the roster through free agency failed the ACC. And last but not least, when you look at Washington and Texas, who are both in, they have coaches who have not been on campus for more than 3 football seasons. So if you were a freshman in 2020 you would not be playing for the same coach at either Washington or Texas. We talk a lot about players and movement, and it's a dirty game, and these guys are leaving it. Well, two of the top four coaches in the country haven't even spent a whole recruiting cycle at their respective institutions. Can you really get mad at the kids? Absolutely not. We'll come back to that. Pocket that.
You know, the last thing that I want to look at from this playoff picture, when I look at the entirety of it, is even when it goes to 12 teams, I don't see the guys who win it consistently changing much. I think that there's certain teams that have set themselves apart from the pack. But I do think one of the most significant bowl games is this. For Florida State to have a legitimate argument, they can't get blown out by Georgia in the Orange Bowl. They have to go out and compete at a high level against Georgia, because if Georgia comes out and blows Florida State out, it just becomes a C. You see what I mean? This is why that decision was made. But if Florida State can knock Georgia, will have those questions.
Here's the kicker to that. Love that. Georgia, does Bowers play? Does McConkey play? Does Mims play? If I'm those guys, I'm not playing. On the other side, does Verse play? Does Coleman play for FSU? If I'm those guys, I'm not playing. If I'm a day one selection in the NFL draft and we're not playing in the college football playoff, but my team made the top 10 in the country, I fulfilled my obligations. Everybody in the community who helped me with the NIL, I did what I was supposed to do. I'm getting ready for the draft. I'm gone.
I don't disagree with that. We'll start to get, I'm sure, over the next week or two, some of those announcements as who's doing what. But listen, let's move on. Let's turn the page, because I saw an Instagram post, or it might have been Twitter. I don't know what post, but I saw, let the apologies be just as loud as the disrespect. And that was from Angel Reese, LSU, back in the fold. Now, you said it wasn't a real forest fire. You said it just, you
That's
put the
fine.
stove on medium a little bit. What's going on at LSU? Angel Reese is back. Where do we go from here?
I told y'all there was no need to call Smokey the Bear. There was no need to Wyclef John 911, and look at where we're at. Reese comes back with a vengeance, 19-9, an All-American-like performance against an All-American in Elizabeth Kitley for Virginia Tech. They had the pack rocking. You would have never known that anything had been wrong in Baton Rouge. Here's the underlying story to me. There's an old J. Cole and Jay-Z song called Every Day a Star is Born. While Reese was gone, a new star has emerged, potentially a new sheriff in Baton Rouge. Once Reese departs, this becomes Anissa Morrow's town. 36-17, points and rebounds there over Virginia in the Caymans. She comes back, has another great night, and she really is the yin to Reese's yang, and they both bring such energy to the table. But Morrow brings the shooting production that maybe Reese doesn't have at this point in her career. But now that Morrow's had the green light and that time with Reese not on the floor to really find herself inside of that offense with Kim Mulkey, she's comfortable shooting the three. She was shooting the one-legged phase looking like Dirk Nowitzki. She was going crazy. And I think the biggest byproducts for them long-term in Reese's absence was the ability for Morrow to find that space and that rhythm. And they look like a team that could be playing on the last weekend of the year again, which doesn't surprise us. But it's always neat to watch the curves on how you get there. You know, as a former elite level coach yourself, you might have something on paper September 1, but how you arrive there is going to always take some turns that you didn't foresee. And I thought Kim Mulkey did a great job of handling it. We still don't even know what the reasoning is. And maybe better yet, we shouldn't. What we do know is that Reese is back. Unfortunately for the Tigers, Samaya Smith is out for the year. I love her. Talk about front court depth, but they've got the freshman Aaliyah Del Rosario, who's giving them some good minutes. Morrow now is a brand new star. Reese looks like her All-American self, and here they are rolling again. Last thought before I let you ride on this one. They are the Las Vegas Aces of the NCAA. Everybody getting the check. They got a big-time coach. Becky Hammond's got a pedigree that precedes everybody in that room, even Asia Wilson. Kim Mulkey's pedigree precedes everybody in that room, even Angel Reese. So you have to listen. It's filled with the Bulls. Like, there aren't very many people that can command a room with the type of talent that LSU has that coach at the collegiate level, Kim Mulkey can. And she did. And now it's back on track.
So what you telling me is the championship still runs through Baton Rouge. That's what you're telling
Until
me.
otherwise proven. Now, I love what South Carolina's doing. They're doing it with a sum of all parts. Matter of fact, just before we jumped on the air here to record, they beat Duke by about 15 today on Duke's floor at Cameron Indoor. All five starters in double figures, including Chloe Kitts, who I think the world of as a player. Been in the lab with her a good bit. Raven Johnson, been in the lab with her. Maybe the nation's most efficient point guard. Georgia Amore at Virginia Tech's going to score more, produce better numbers. Haley Van List from LSU was getting there. But night in and night out, Johnson's really found her way. But I think it's those two right now, and then everybody else is playing from behind.
So you saying they the champs till they ain't the champs no more?
They the champs till they ain't the champs no more. Hey, and the only people who really can say something is the people who were the champs before, and that's Don Staley.
Ooh, okay. Okay. Transfer portal open tomorrow, B.
Talk to me. You have all the insight in the scoop. This is your area. I got some thoughts behind you, but give me the 411 on what's really going on.
I want to always start off with this. Every year, tons of kids make mistakes by going in the portal. 80% of the kids that are going in the transfer portal should stay where they are. Now, here's where the water gets muddy. All of them can't stay. Some of them are being told they have to leave. And so I understand that that part of it becomes a delicate situation. And I'm surprised mostly that year after year that the kids don't understand how much of a business this is. We still shouldn't be at this point, kids getting still caught up in the same situations where they're picking schools based on things that are not related to what's best for business for them. So that's still disturbing to me that despite what everybody can see happening year in and year out, you still have kids picking schools over uniforms, jerseys, facilities. They like a certain program. It was their favorite program growing up. You better look at the business because a lot of these guys are losing on the business side of this thing.
Hey, Reed, you do a great job on social media about talking about this stuff. You made a Hunger Game reference that I thought was absolutely fantastic. I think it ties into the first part of what you're saying. Give me that reference again, and then walk me through the business side of this for people who aren't as adept at this as you are being in it every day.
Some people are going to make it, and some people aren't, you know? And so that's really what this thing boils down to, B. And when you're picking these schools, every kid goes in thinking they're going to the NFL. Even when you see guys picking Division II schools, what's the first thing they say? They say, well, you can still make it to the league from Division II. I mean, you can, but most likely you're not. So you're already going into this with the wrong mentality. You're already going into this looking at this wrong. You have to secure the bag one way or another, and that's through your education. But we got guys that are chasing football or chasing basketball or whatever this is, but you're not paying attention to the depth chart. You think I'm a big time high school player? Well, you picked a school that has 3 returning guys at your position. You're not going to play. Guy was first team all conference a year ago. He plays the same position as you. Those guys don't get sat on the bench. So now you're there and you're not playing and you feel like you've been lied to when in reality you lied to yourself. You didn't look at this for what it really was. You're a girls basketball player right now. If LSU returns every starter, you think you're starting next year for Kim Mulkey? You not. So are you willing to accept the role, or are you going to cry at the first sign of adversity? Then we have now because you have added the NIL to it. What happens is there are guys that are giving up scholarships at schools that great fits at because somebody gave them a little more money. Well, now they're not playing. So I've talked to over 10 coaches in the last week who have said this guy's not going to get any money if he stays here next year. This guy's not, because they haven't made any plays. Nobody's going to give you 100, 200, 300 grand, and then you go out there and don't bust a grape and you think that check's still going to hit your account. It doesn't work like that. And they are ignoring that as a big part of the business.
Makes perfect sense. Well, I think there's, and I want to get into the 24/7 stuff y'all are going to do tomorrow. I'm coming back to that. I think there's a lot of value here early at the quarterback position, Reed. Seems to be that's the position to me that's really jumping off the page. And then offensive line and defensive line, again, will be at a premium. I don't feel like you're going to have the same type of quality available per capita as you do at quarterback. Walk me through why that is.
Number one, if you're a quarterback, that's the position that can change your team immediately. We just talked about Florida State getting put out the national championship because their quarterback goes down. If you have elite quarterback play, it's worth your weight in gold. Think about a quarterback can be the position, the difference between you going 4-8 and 8-4, which is the difference between you being fired and between you getting a 4 or 5 year extension on a $30 million buyout. So that one position, if you can find a guy who can really run your offense, be a leader of your team, you have to get that. You have to pay for that. So those guys who've proven that they can play quarterback, that they can make the throws, that they can show leadership, those guys are worth their weight in gold. Then you got to go for the line. The reason that the line is at a premium, you got to go to the old Bill Parcells planet theory. And what the Bill Parcells planet theory always was, there's only so many large individuals on planet Earth. There's only so many. There's way more dudes that are 5'10", 180 pounds walking around than there are guys that are 6'6", 330, and that are athletic enough to play Division I football. So if you're one of those guys and you find yourself in a situation where you're 6'3" to 6'8", and you in that 280 to 350 pound range, and you have shown that you can move grown men off of their spot against their will, then you are a guy that everybody needs on their football team.
I love that one. You look at again, we talk about the final four left, right? Michael Penix did not start at Washington. He was in Indiana. Quinn Ewers started at Ohio State and came back home to Texas. Ironically, for the two coaches that changed their situations, they were looking for quarterback play. And please believe both those guys are going to get rewarded with huge contracts, coaching wise, but then also the players too. I also want to touch on Norvell. I know Florida State didn't make it, but the job that he did last year, whether it was Keon Coleman, Jared Verse, I know you love Verse, and you were screaming from the rooftop before anybody else really got on, hey, this guy is a difference maker. And that's exactly what he did. So there's a ton of value out there in the portal, being able to put the right price tag on it, so to speak, go and knock it out. Talk to me about the coverage that y'all are going to bring home tomorrow, 24/7 Sports. Who all is going to be involved? I know you got to sit down with Dion. Walk us through all that.
Wall-to-wall coverage. Everything you need to know about the transfer portal to be on 24/7 tomorrow. You got Dion is coming on. You got Eli Drinkwitz coming on. Cody Schrader's coming on. Toriano Pride and MJ Morris from Clemson and NC State are coming on to talk about the decisions that they made to transfer. Jeff Lebby is coming on, new coach at Mississippi State. So wall-to-wall coverage is going to be a great time. If you are not tuned in to 24/7 Sports tomorrow, you don't care what's going on in the transfer portal.
I love it. Hey, last thought here to Deion Sanders. I love what he said last year, but I think now a year later we can kind of clean it up a little bit. And it was last spring. I'm bringing my luggage and it's Louis. And I like that, right? I do. But I also think that the transfer portal, and Levy's going to get a chance to really benefit from this coming year. Can you go and find some guys that maybe aren't elite, right? But the tape screams that they can be productive guys. Maybe it's not Louis Vuitton luggage, but it's really nice bags. It's higher end bags that aren't name brand and designer. And how can you piece that? If you can get Drake's done a great job, right? Luther Burden, Louis luggage. Brady Cook in college football, Louis luggage, right? Schrader, a guy that would not have had the Louis luggage tag, but he's giving you Louis luggage results. Can you go and find some pieces like that? And I think, again, Deion's still another year away. So it'd be interesting to see how they attack that. And I'd like to get some insight, if you have it, before we get off here, on kind of where you think that he goes with this. But I think that's the second part to the statement. So I'm bringing my luggage and it's Louis, but I also need to bring some luggage that produces like that, but doesn't have that tag. And I think that's where Jimmy Horn Jr. was so good, right? The Edwards kid in the backfield. Those guys weren't guys we were screaming from the hills about. That was Travis, that was Shador. But it took a village to be able to make sure Travis and Shador were straight. And we saw that down the stretch that they needed more luggage in total, not just the high-end pieces.
When you talk about your recruiting class in the game of football, you're going to always want to recruit 3 to 5 big time guys that are huge difference makers. But the bulk of your roster is going to be made of guys that have one thing that they do very well. It could be a pass rusher, a run stopper, a guy that can run two routes at a high level, a guy that's a run stopping linebacker, a top shelf safety, a man corner, a zone corner. And you have to find a way to take all of those attributes and mold them into a team and get those guys playing at a high level doing what they do best. And that's where you pick your spots in the portal. That's when you decide the difference between taking a portal guy or a high school guy. And so those will be the differences. And I think now they understand what they have to add to their roster to go to that level. And I'm excited to see what they come up with.
What do you take if you're them? What are the 3 or 4 must-haves when I walk away from this portal, this first round, if I'm Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes?
Offensive line, defensive line, and you need one game changing linebacker. You need one linebacker that's a sideline to sideline guy that can go and get you open field tackles at the highest level.
Will Dabo finally go shopping?
He has to. He's too. One thing about Dabo, man, he's competitive. And I think some people, when you hear him talking, and he's giving his speeches and his sermons and stuff. You think it's one thing, but he's another. He's all dog, and he tried it one way and it didn't work. There's no doubt in my mind that he goes in the portal and gets some key additions because he wants to win national championships and he wants to be able to say he told you so. Don't think anything else.
I love it. Hey, I'm looking forward to it. I will be tuned in all day. I already got everything fired up. I'm just waiting for y'all to tweet out the link. I'm gonna go grab it, and I'm locked in the office all day tomorrow, man. Go crazy.
Guys, like, share, subscribe. We'll see you next time.